What's up, everyone? Welcome to the first episode of our Should You Play series. This is going to be essentially our version of a review. I am VBerg, and so what we're going to be doing today is we're going to tell you about a game we've been playing. We're going to give you some details about the plot, mostly just the initial setup, as we want to avoid spoilers. We're going to give you some insights and tips about mechanics, and we're going to give you what we thought were the pros and what we thought were the cons, so that you, as a consumer, can make an educated decision about whether or not this is the right kind of game for you. Sometimes we're going to cover brand new games, sometimes we're going to cover old games. We're not going to give the game a score, as we think that's kind of an antiquated system. We're just going to tell you what it is and what it isn't. And today we're going to be hopping into Hazelight Studios' newest game, Split Fiction, which is a local or online co-op action platformer with tons of puzzles. All the footage you're seeing and will see was recorded on a PlayStation 5, and we did not receive a review copy. We paid for this with our own money. Alright, so first off, let's dive into the game's story. The story revolves around the angsty Mio, who is a sci-fi author in desperate need of cash, and the bubbly Zoe, a fantasy author whose dream is to show off her creativity to the world. Or at least that's what she claims at surface level. There's actually much more that's going on with both gals under the persona that they project to others. Both gals have received a publishing offer from a publishing company called Raider. But Raider isn't quite what it actually appears to be. The CEO of Raider is a stand-in for various tech moguls who believe they are some sort of messiah, and Raider has actually built a machine that steals stories from young desperate authors so that he can create a monopoly on storytelling and art. Mio starts to get fishy of this whole getting plugged into a machine to experience your story premise so that you can get published, and tries to leave when Raider accidentally forces her into Zoe's simulation. The two gals start off at odds with one another and then eventually decide to band together and interact with glitches in the simulation they hope will save their stories from Raider's machine, as the simulation throws the depths of their own imaginations at them as obstacles. Now, it probably sounds like I've told you a lot about the game's story, but that's actually about the first 10 minutes of the game. And after that, there's a whole lot more filled with heartfelt, hilarious, and wonderful moments filled with arguing, laughing, and bonding later in the story, and that are fantastic. It's very much worth experiencing. There's some seriously good character development in this title, and absolutely phenomenal story pacing. Alright, so let's talk about the game's mechanics. And, oh boy, this game has an absurd number of mechanics. You're going to be hopping from various sci-fi and fantasy-inspired settings throughout the wild and crazy ride that is Split Fiction. You'll be using a gravity sword to slash enemies and alter your own gravity to reposition yourself as one character, while the other character is using a gravity whip to pick up and toss heavy objects and enemies or pull things closer. And that's just one stage. Another character will transform into an ape to climb and break objects, while the other transforms into a fairy to fly and crawl through tiny nooks and crannies, and that's also just one stage. There's also, well, what's going on right here? And, you know, I don't even want to get into too many of the other mechanics, except to say the level of polish on all of the mechanics in this game could have easily been made into their own game, and perhaps with a different studio at the helm, the game would have exclusively revolved around 3 or 4 of the mechanics found in just one of the major stages of this game. There's a certain magic in seeing much of this title for yourself due to the constant stage and mechanic hopping. The platforming in the game feels very fluid and fun. One thing that was just really fun was how the game would often alternate between cooperative puzzles we were solving together to the occasional solo portion of a puzzle where one of us had to figure something out just to move on to the next part. The gals' ideas will occasionally pop up in the other one's worlds through a portal the game refers to as side stories. So when you're running around in Mio's cyberpunk world, some of Zoe's fantasy ideas are bleeding through, and you can enter these side mission areas to help keep their ideas safe. These will have their own unique mechanics and settings, so there's just constant change-up of puzzle types that you're experiencing. The boss fights were pretty fast-paced with lots of enemy barrages to avoid, so that you could figure out the most efficient time to deal damage to the boss encounters. Alright, let's dive into the game's aesthetics, visuals, sound, and voice acting. The game's visuals are absolutely fantastic to take in. I can't tell you how many times I was totally floored by a vista and thinking to myself, okay, this has got to be the coolest or most gorgeous thing I'm going to see in this game. And then, bam, 20 minutes later, we'd be teleported to a new area of the game and I'd just be wowed all over again. The sci-fi settings are oozing cyberpunk charm, or that overwhelming scale of hard sci-fi, and the fantasy settings are meticulous in their architecture or jaw-dropping due to scope and grandeur. The set designs are just gorgeous. I mean, this is on par with Uncharted and Tomb Raider for just these kind of like big wow moments that you take in. And there's often, too, by some of the really amazing set pieces, a bench for the gals to sit and take a breather and just talk about life while you take in the scene, and just beautiful integration of storytelling combined with visual aesthetics. The voice acting is also top-notch here. Kaja Chan and Elsie Bennett as Mio and Zoe respectively did really great work.
I don't need your trust.
Well, I kinda need yours.
Alright, let's talk about bugs and glitches. I'm very happy to report we encountered almost no major bugs or glitches. One time during a boss fight, as you can see here, I got stuck while trying to Vanquish-style slide and became immune to enemy damage for a while. The game eventually let me off the slide point I was stuck on, and then I died. I did also get stuck on a wall one time that I landed on during a sequence, but was able to finagle myself free. And we noticed one visual bug where someone's mouth didn't move in, one of the cutscenes. All extremely minor bugs here. It's really impressive in the, current era of gaming that a game on launch day was this polished. Alright, let's get into the game's pros. For the pros, one of my favorite parts was how the puzzles don't really feel tacked on this game. There's this kind of sense of organicness to everything. Like, yeah, it's a platforming and puzzle sequence, but the way they're all broken up makes them feel almost purposeful instead of like, oh, hey, here's some obligatory puzzle part because, we're supposed to do that, I don't know, some games just feel that way, and for me, this one didn't. I mentioned it before, but when the gals would, just take those breaks and chat about life or play on a slide or skip rocks, those were some just really fun moments in the game. It had this sense of just like feeling like something that I myself would do if I was trapped in a simulated, version of my imagination. Like I would just take advantage of this moment, to play on a water slide because for once the genocidal robots weren't trying to kill me or something. So yeah. With all the mechanics being so polished, every new sequence or side story just felt like a breath of fresh air. Nothing in this game ever felt stagnant or played out. And speaking of the side stories, a few of them are kind of hidden, so it felt really rewarding wandering off the beaten path here and there and then stumbling across a hidden side story. Another big pro in my book is that the game has replayability. Since you're playing either Mio or Zoe, and they each have their own unique role in puzzle solving and mechanics on every major stage, you could easily play the game a second time and not feel like you were retreading old ground. Many of the action sequences are so intense you can barely take your eyes off of your own screen to see what the heck the other player is doing. Not to mention the game is so damned fun, you can easily play this every year or two and probably still have a blast revisiting many of the unique stages. I plan to. There were also tons of fun Easter eggs encountered throughout the game that were obvious nods to prominent games throughout the years. I noticed very overt references to Mario, Dark Souls, Assassin's Creed, Prince of Persia, and of course to Hazelight's last game, It Takes Two. I probably missed a dozen or so due to the fast pace of some of these areas. I wouldn't be shocked if there's a whole lot more out there. Someone's probably already working on compiling a Wikipedia page of them all or something.
Get ready!
Alright, now let's get into the game's cons. I don't really have a lot to say in terms of cons about this game. I can think of only about two minor complaints, and one was actually the checkpoint system. It's occasionally a little too frequent, and it will cause you to be in the middle of a puzzle or platforming moment that will require precise timing. And with them being so frequent, I sometimes didn't feel like I got enough time to adjust after a death and be ready for that moment. There was also the occasional platforming section where if you seemed to fail it, X number of times, the game would just kind of move you forward here and there. It happened on some parts and not on others. It was just, it was just mildly annoying when, I felt like I was right there on the precipice of figuring out the timing of this jump sequence, and the game would just be like, yeah, okay, mister, you sucked at this long enough, let's move on. And, some people won't care about that. It annoyed us once or twice, but those are all pretty minor complaints in my book. Alright, let's discuss the game's accessibility and quality of life features. The game has a ton of options for people. The usual stuff in terms of subtitles, closed captioning, and background mode for the subtitles, and closed captioning to enhance the readability. There's a nighttime play mode that preserves the clarity of the game's sounds when playing at lower volumes. Each player can also individually customize their control setup for their vibration levels, inverted stick schemes for flying and driving sequences, as well as camera sensitivities, button remapping, and the ability to choose between mashing, holding, or auto-completion of quick-time events, reticle toggling, and the ability to reduce certain types of damage taken by either or both players. I don't personally use many of these kinds of options, but it always makes me happy to see developers add in stuff like this for those who do need it or who just want it. Alright, and to summarize our should you play, I highly recommend this game. My wife and I played through the game over a weekend. We had an absolute blast just sitting on the couch together. If you enjoy co-op games, this is one of the best co-op games I've played in my decades of gaming. It would be a blast to play with anyone you have that kind of bond with, be it a sibling, parent, significant other, friend, kiddo, or whomever. And with many of the game's accessibility options, even if the other person isn't terribly into gaming or comfortable with it, I think the challenge could be scaled down to an appropriate level of fun for them. There was some occasional cussing. I think I counted the S word 3 times and the F word like once, just in case you want to play with the kids. Do be forewarned about that. But yeah. Only you know based on what you've seen and heard here whether or not this is the kind of game for you, though.
We sure caused a lot of explosions.
And it's gonna get worse.
So tell us, what did you think? Does Split Fiction look like something you'd get into, or are you not feeling it? Let us know down in the comments. We hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, we'd like to take a moment and say from all of us here at Game Conclave, thank you so much for watching.